You can definitely lose the
It's a
jacket.
tie.
Like,
And the jacket. Oh, yeah.
if you'd
Oh.
like. It's not a button-up shirt.
Yeah, it's a button-up shirt. Oh, this is much more comfortable.
It does seem odd when you're in your own house.
Yep.
And you haven't worn pants in a year.
Hey, that was between us.
Oh, sorry.
All right, we could be streaming now, so just be cautious.
Oh, we need a 30-second warning.
Yeah, 30-second warning. Chris, I'm giving you the 30-second warning.
Thank you, Your Worship. We just went live.
Okay, thanks.
I guess nobody needs to see my husband's.
All right, Council, it's 5 o'clock. Time to get down to work. Today, we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous Peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe peoples, and on the lands connected with the Lake Simcoe and Ottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of indigenous peoples, whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. And I will now look to the Deputy Mayor for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, and it is seconded by Councillor McLeod. Be it resolved that the content of the council agenda for June 22nd, 2020 be adopted as amended to include the bylaws to appoint municipal law enforcement officers and amendments to the Heritage Committee grant motion. I will call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor Hamlin has her hand up. Next up, declarations of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have a declaration for today? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position as we progress, please let us know in the general nature thereof. Adoption of the minutes from the regular meeting of June 15, 2020. It is moved by Councillor McLeod and seconded by Councillor Comey. Be it resolved that the minutes of the council meeting held June 15, 2020 be approved as presented. Any errors or omissions, council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Any business arising from the previous minutes, council? Seeing none, we will move on to community announcements, and I will start with you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I just thought I would mention yesterday, many of us were celebrating or honoring Father's Day. And the reason I mention it is in the context that this month is National Indigenous Peoples Month. And the town of Collingwood has been doing an excellent job, and I would encourage people, if so interested, to check out a series of videos that have been put together from members of our Indigenous community, both within Collingwood and abroad, who are sharing their stories. And the reason that I mention it in the context of Father's Day is that yesterday was also National Indigenous Peoples Day. And I have to admit, although I knew that we were celebrating and honoring the history this month, I didn't actually know that we had a history day, or I should say an Indigenous Day. And it's a day that was declared between the government of Canada and Indigenous peoples. And the reason that the 21st of June was selected within the calendar was to celebrate and coincide with the summer solstice. So I bring that to people's attention. Again, if interested, check out the video series that's been posted or produced through the town. It's excellent.
It is. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to take a minute to pass on a little bit of praise. Last week, I was in an online event hosted by the County of Simcoe and featuring Dr. Charles Gardner, who is the Medical Officer of Health for the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit. And he said, what the models have shown, now that we are into several months of the coronavirus crisis, what their modeling has shown is that the work that we have all done by staying home and by wearing masks and by only grocery shopping once in a while and the rest of it and social distancing actually has prevented somewhere around 35,000 cases of COVID in our health unit area. So that's Gravenhurst down to Alliston and over to Blue Mountains. And that, I think, is a really phenomenal success. And I know that we're all very frustrated and very tired and we want to hug our friends really badly, but we've kind of done it here. And I think that we need to sort of sit with that and feel some of that success, even while we are staying away from some of our nearest and dearest for a little while longer. But 35,000 cases, we really, really need to think about that. And especially with the mortality rate being what it is from COVID, depending on who you talk to, between 2 and 8%, that's a lot of lives saved as well. So yay us.
Thank you. Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's National Pollinator Week, and Pollinate Collingwood is asking you to follow them along on Facebook at Pollinate Collingwood. They are posting activities and giveaways and fun facts about native pollinators. And for those who might not know, there's a great relationship between PRC and Pollinate Collingwood and a lot of our local residents with getting a lot of wonderful native pollinator plants around town. And you can learn a lot more about it by following along at Pollinate Collingwood on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Madigan.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2 items. First of all, just to remind the members of the public that our Canada Day celebrations will be just a little different this year, but hopefully just as fun and engaging as they always are. We will be partnering with the Peak to Shore Festival and featuring all kinds of musical presentations and other presentations on Facebook. And there will be other activities, and there are many recommendations for how we can participate individually or by neighborhood, and all of those recommendations can be found online. And secondly, just a reminder that the official plan update is still ongoing, and our planning department and consultant are still soliciting for feedback from our residents. So please, if you have a good idea as to, how you would like to see our community evolve in the next 20 years, and please go online again to the town website, to the Engage Collingwood page, and fill out the survey. And that's it for me and my cat Chloe this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Doherty. You have a very patriotic cat. Councillor Berman, that's a no. Okay. Councillor Jeffrey. Nothing tonight. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. So this week on Wednesday from 4:30 to 6 is the last in the series of the called Mapping Our Road to Recovery that's being hosted by the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay. So if you were to go onto their website, you can sign up for free. And the topic this week, I'll just read from here, working together towards a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future will feature speakers from the major sectors of business, nonprofit, charitable, government, and philanthropy. This session will explore themes and action items in some of the recovery task force across the region, like Collinwood, and how we can align ourselves, objectives, pool resources, and accelerate collective action towards creating a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable future. Speakers will include our own Mark Palmer, and I'll just give a shout out to the mayor. Thank you for speaking at the last event. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a great opportunity, and the Institute's doing a wonderful job, and congratulations to them for becoming so proactive in the regional road to recovery. So we'll be interested in seeing where those discussions take us, and I will be tuning in with interest on Wednesday. So thank you for that, Councillor Hamlin. I have one announcement tonight, and that is to announce that the doorway art installation to engage our community is on the ground. There are 2 here at Town Hall, one at the library and one which will be moving around town. And it's to invite the commentary and engage the public in discussions about diversity and tolerance and combating racism in our community. So that is an exciting art installation, and congratulations to staff for getting that in place so quickly. So those are it for announcements tonight, and that brings us to the consent agenda, and it is moved by Councillor Comey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by council, be received. So I will just call the vote first, and then I will ask if there are items to be pulled. So dealing first with the vote, all in favor? That is carried unanimously, thank you. And there are 2 items on the, I guess I should have mentioned that. 6.1 is a letter from the Board of Directors of Simcoe County Condominium Corporation 330 with respect to safety issues on Heritage Drive. And the second 6.2 is from Ace Transportation Group, re-waiver of tax license fees. Are there any items that we would like to pull tonight, Council? I've got Councillor Comey and then Councillor Hammond. Go ahead, Councillor Comey and Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull 6.1, the Heritage Drive safety issues, please.
Okay. Councillor Hammond?
Mine is the same as Councillor Comey's.
Okay. Councillor Doherty, that leaves you for 6.2, I think.
Yes, please.
Okay. And what does Chloe say?
She's fully prepared to follow our recommendations.
Okay, good. So I will then start with item 6.1, Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a Chloe, but there's 10-year-old boys downstairs that might be worse. First of all, this is a letter, as you mentioned, from the board with regard to safety concerns on Heritage Drive. And I really want to thank Bruce, Larry, and Jocelyn for taking the time to write in this and bring it to council's attention, because we were just touching on this last meeting under other business, the importance of pedestrian and vehicle traffic safety concerns. And I know Director Slama is going to provide us an opportunity to speak to some of their particular concerns. I had wrote to her to say, even though, as we all well know, we don't have the sailing school this year or the paddle camp, I was just down there this morning with performance paddlers. It was about 6:40 in the morning, and I was even surprised at how much traffic was down there. I think all of us are familiar with the amount of young people on bikes, people walking, and then the boat trailers, the size of the trucks that pull the boat trailers. And it does, I would agree strongly with this letter that there is reason for concern. And they've presented a few actionable things here they're asking of council. So maybe without saying much more, perhaps Director Slama could comment on the letter and some of the possible actions they've suggested.
I think Peggy's prepared to do that. Director Slama? Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So yeah, I can speak to this letter that we've received from the condo board. So I thought first I'd just touch on what Heritage Drive, kind of the condition of it today, and what it looks like and why that is. So Parks, Rec, and Culture did do some work last year on the trail out to Millennium Point. But unfortunately, the high water and our winter conditions kind of washed out that trail and caused some damage. And along with trail damage, there was also some immediate concern to address by EPCOR to address the hydro poles that are out there. So currently, we've got EPCOR doing some work to move the electricity from pole mount to buried lines, and that's running along the vicinity of the trail. And so Parks, Rec, and Culture aren't going to be able to fix that trail until that work is complete by EPCOR. And I will also comment and say, right, that the general condition of the road on Heritage Drive isn't great. And we are aware of that. And we do try to do some work to rectify what we can and make it better for the vehicle traffic that does happen on there and the bicycle traffic. And, but when we look at, when we give consideration of what Heritage Drive might look like in the future, we need to know a little bit more about what the plans are at Millennium Park. So we know we need to get some servicing down there, but we don't know what we need for servicing. We know there's drainage issues that need to be addressed, and also the road conditions. So those are all the things that we keep in mind, and we're trying to bring together, and we're working towards a greater vision in the future, but it is not something that we're going to see a great change with in the immediate future. With respect to the request for this to be a community safety zone, that is something we can consider at this location. Heritage Drive is the entrance to a park, and community safety zones can be applied in school areas and park areas. So that is something that we can do. It would require the passing of a bylaw, and it would result in the doubling of speed fines for any enforcement that happens on that road. So staff would support the implementation of this. The letter also requests a consideration of lowering the speed limit to 30 kilometers an hour. We're not confident that lowering the speed limit would actually see a reduction in speeds, would really make a difference for the drivers, but I think that a community safety zone would. And we would also comment that the OPP is aware of the issues, and we know that they do some enforcement on Heritage Drive, and that they have issued tickets. So we will make sure that this letter that the town has received is forwarded to the Police Services Board for their correspondence consent agenda. And we also have forwarded this letter to the detachment commander as well, like immediately today, so that she is aware of it, and she can take it into consideration. Another comment from the letter from the condo board was asking about a crosswalk at Side Launch Way and Heritage Drive. And people who go down there know that Side Launch Way isn't fully developed yet. Like the whole shipyards development is not complete. And in particular, what's not complete is the development blocks that are on the west side of Heritage Drive. So it would be premature for us to consider a crosswalk at that location at this time. But as we review the development applications when they come in, we can give some consideration to that. I will note that our 3-meter wide multi-use trail does run along First Street and crosses Heritage Drive at First Street. And then the multi-use trail runs up the east side of Heritage Drive. So that is just 90 meters south of Side Launch Way. So for some residents that need to have a more safer crossing, we would recommend that they use that location because there are the traffic lights and the controlled crosswalk there. And I think the last comment was just about monitoring the pedestrian and cycling adherence to the rules of the road. So that also falls under the jurisdiction of the OPP. So again, they'll be made aware of the concerns for the area when we forward this letter to them. So those were those are the points or my comments with respect to the recommendations included in that letter. If anyone has any more questions.
Those were great answers, Director Slama. If I could just have a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, and then I see others. The community safety point, if staff would be willing to consider it, and if council were to agree, how could we move this forward given it's the summer months and it's really a peak time for both traffic and bikes and all this wonderfulness? And given that we don't meet in August, what could we do to move that along?
through the mayor to Councillor Comey. So it would be a tight timeline for us to bring a staff report for development and operations in July, but we could try to do that, understanding that if we don't hit it in July, then we're not seeing it again until September.
Is it because you need a whole bunch of data to support it being a community safety zone? You need the speed data to go with it?
We have some speed data that we could use, and we can move our radar recorders and collect some more data. It's just a matter of the resources, right? Our staff resources and prioritizing it. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're on mute, Mayor Saunderson.
Thanks, Peggy. I was worried that there might be a cat in my room. So I had Councillor Hamlin next, and then the Deputy Mayor. So go ahead, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Director Slama. I totally appreciate everything that you've just explained to us. I'm wondering if there's any chance that some kind of indication that people are crossing at Side Launch Way could be installed. And I understand the cost of a full crosswalk and your hesitation at this point. But are there other kinds of signs we could put up, like pedestrians crossing here, or anyway, that's my question.
Director Slama.
Through the mayor, yeah, I can speak to Manager Velick and see what he would recommend for the implementation of kind of pedestrian crossing signs.
Yeah, because I've had a few contacts from residents in the last few days, and I guess everyone's noticing the crowds up there now. Okay. And so anything you can do would be appreciated. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Councillor Hamlin. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just a question and then a comment. The question is, does this request in any way dovetail, or could it dovetail into the request that came from the western side of the shipyard development and specific to Side Launch Way, and some of the concerns that were raised by those or that condo corp? So that would be the question.
Director Slama.
Through the mayor, could you remind me of what the concerns were brought forward on the west side of Heritage? The sidewalk?
I think the specific concern from a macro is that there wasn't sufficient parking, and as a result of increased parking from the commercial buildings to the south and to the ongoing construction, and quite frankly, that's only going to continue to get busier if the developments closer to Heritage actually do move forward, because they're fairly significant. So I'm just wondering if the whole area could be looked at as one, as opposed to looking at Heritage and Side Launch independent of one another.
Director Slama.
Yes, through the mayor. So certainly, as I mentioned, right, when those developments come in, we do give some greater consideration to how they're going to blend with what's happening in that neighborhood. And I know that Director Farr also had a meeting, and I was part of the meeting as well, with some of the developers that are looking at those blocks on the west side of Heritage Drive, and also the one remaining more kind of a little bit further west, the block that's a little bit further west. So those developers have had some conversations with Director Farr about the concepts and having the concepts really blending nicely together. And I feel that we have given the consideration to Heritage Drive also when we're looking at those remaining blocks to be developed.
Deputy Mayor, any follow-up?
So then I guess now two comments. One would be specific to the side of the area that I could call which property or parcel, but specifically from Heritage going west on the south side to, I guess, where the property that houses the Bank of Montreal ends today and where that sidewalk ends. Could consideration be given for something temporary similar to what was done at Sunset Point, where an artificial barrier was put in place, like cones, etc., to create a sidewalk? And the reason I ask that is that, and I say this respectfully, and it's not intent, it's a bit of a dog's breakfast in that particular area, in terms of where properties end, where they start. And so creating something would give a sense of definition, so that if somebody was walking from the west to the east and wanted to get over to Heritage, recognizing that you did mention the 3-meter sidewalk is to the south, but we all know that people still continue to walk down Side Launch. And perhaps if for the summer we put in some type of sidewalk using barriers similar to what was done at Sunset Point, to create that sense of a sidewalk. And then the last comment would be, and it really just sort of ties into COVID, and from an observational standpoint, the OPP are certainly down there on a much more regular basis, and seem to be doing, as a result of trying to control the numbers going out to Millennial Park, seem to be doing a better job of just enforcing speed, et cetera, simply because they're physically there in their cruisers, which is a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And items, does this relate to 6.1 or 6.2?
Yeah,
Councillor Jeffrey?
Quick
Okay.
comment. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Yeah, no, my question was, does, I know we've never lined Heritage Drive at all. In terms of safety of traffic and separating, does that help at all? Like a lot of municipalities you see going into their communities where they have slow painted across. I think of Caledon, and I think of Fergus, and I think of just keeping the message out there front and center to people as they're going down. I don't know if it helps or not. There may be data that suggests it doesn't.
Through the mayor, that again is something that I could have a conversation with Manager Velick about. He probably has some good comments on that and some awareness of if how beneficial it would be, or help or not help.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. See no further comments on item 6.1. 6.2, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much. This was a request from ACE Transportation, as you know, for a reduction in their regular licensing fees in recognition of the exceptional economic circumstances under COVID-19 this year, and in particular because they were designated as an essential service and therefore had no choice but to operate to provide needed transportation to individuals during this entire pandemic. I just wanted to reiterate that this is a matter that I have brought forth when we did review fees earlier this year, that the whole rideshare sector has changed so very much in the last 5 to 10 years. And it seems that conventional taxis may not be operating on a level playing field with other services like Uber and Lyft. And I believe that we do need to review our licensing fees to these operators. And this is a very good start in recognition of as I say, the very exceptional operating conditions that we find ourselves in today. And I see that staff actually have drafted a motion to this effect to endorse their request.
Yes, you're correct. We have a motion on the floor for this year pursuant to the request. And the larger issue, I think, of taxi fees, given the new environment with Uber and ride programs, I think is left for another day. But this particular motion deals with the request for waiving the fees this year. And I see that Clerk Almas is got her hand up, so I will pass it. Go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry, through the chair. It looks like Director Farr has his hand up to provide a comment.
Okay, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Director Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Doherty. When this motion came forward, staff were generally like-minded with council in recognition of the front line role that taxi cab drivers played and the taxi business played in the early stages of the pandemic when there was great uncertainty. Uncertainty continues and the service continues to be delivered. So we indicated in response to this motion that we're supportive in principle, but I wanted to bring to council's attention relative to this motion. We need to clarify the detail around this, and this may be as much as anything me coming up to speed with the complexities of taxi licensing than anything else. And we were going to respectfully request that this item be forwarded to the Development Operations Committee for July 13th, just to provide clarification in the wording around the waiver. There are many license fees in the taxi licensing fees schedule, and our understanding is that the request that was submitted had to do with a small number and for a specific purpose, a number of those fees. So staff are, as indicated in the parentheses, generally supportive of the motion, but for council's interest, we need to provide some clarification and update to the motion.
So just by follow-up then, Director Farr, are you suggesting then that council defer this or refer this through staff to the Development Operations Subcommittee, Standing Committee for further work?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So with that being said then, we're going to amend the motion, and I've got Councillor Hamlin and then Councillor Doherty who would like to speak. Go ahead, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you. Our Director of Planning has really reflected my main comment, which was I would appreciate staff's input on this. And also, I just wanted to clarify that although the letter states that cabs are an essential service, that doesn't mean that they had to provide service and that they have been forced to be out there and that they had to run any loss that they've run, but rather it means that they were allowed to be open when other businesses had to be closed, just to clarify. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this item before I go back to Councillor Doherty? Go ahead, Councillor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jeffrey. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to say, I'm really supportive of having this referred to the D&O committee. My comments were more along the line of a little bit of angst because we have not waived any fees to business specific, and I think everybody's taken a significant hit in their revenues. So, you know, they may well have qualified for the 75% CEWS subsidy toward their wages for taxi drivers. So I would be curious to know if they've been able to access other orders of government for support. And so I really appreciate that this will go to D&O so we can have more discussion regarding those points as well.
Any other comments, Council? Seeing none, go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Yes, thank you. Yes, also, I'm certainly happy to see this item referred to the D&O Standing Committee. In the meantime, are these fees due at this time, or does ACE Transportation, are they able to defer the payment of those fees without penalty until this matter is considered further? I guess maybe a question through you to the treasurer.
Marjorie or Adam, are you able to assist on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Doherty. That's one of the things that we would discuss in considering it and bring it back to D&O. We're aware that the ask has been made. The intent wouldn't be if there's fees that come due in the intervening period if council was to support a waiver to disenfranchise of people, but rather to rebate the fee. That was the thinking that we had applied.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, so we have the motion is moved by Councillor Comey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that council refer this item and the request from ACAB to the Development and Operations Standing Committee for review and input from staff. Any questions or comments on that before I call the vote, council? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to reports and minutes of other committees, and item 7.1 is moved by Councillor Comey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. No, that's the consent agenda. It's moved by Councillor Comey and seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that council, no, that's another motion. Here we go. It's moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Be it resolved that the minutes of the following boards be hereby received and recommendations contained therein approved. The Collingwood Public Library Board minutes of May 28, 2020. First, I'll call to receive the minutes, and then I'll ask if there are any comments or questions coming out of this. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments arising from the minutes? Councillor Hamlin.
Mr. Mayor, through you to staff, I noticed that item 5 of the minutes was the resolution of the library board to postpone indefinitely their 2020 to 2024 strategic plan. And I was wondering if there was an option to the library board to defer their strategic plan to a specific date, just so that it ensures it comes back on the agenda at some point.
Do we have Director Hay with us? CEO, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think when we said indefinitely, we just meant until we had a chance. We haven't been able to go out to the community and do any kind of survey work or anything like that. And so we were just sort of putting it off until the conditions with COVID-19 were better and we were able to, we originally planned on doing some focus groups, and under the current conditions, we really aren't able to do that. So it was just a recognition that until we were able to do that sort of work, we didn't really want to proceed with making any changes or coming up with a completely new strategic plan. We wanted to be able to have the opportunity to get out to the community and hear what they had to say. Because it was our intention this year to renew that strategic plan, but under the conditions, we just didn't see how it was possible. So in lieu of that, the board decided just to continue with the current plan until it was able to actually do the sort of things we wanted to do.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure sometimes when things are deferred indefinitely.
Yeah.
That's what it means. But I hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps it wasn't the best wording.
That's okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Any other questions or comments about the library minutes? Councillor Comey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to comment on the waiving of the fees, overdue fees. I think that was a very nice decision by the board. I know we had a stack here at our house and I appreciated getting them back, but I was going to, through you to Ken, please. The question is, do people have the option to still pay their fines? Like, are they accrued and then at a friendlier, better time for people to come in? Will residents have the option to make that payment?
CEO?
Through you, Your Worship. That hadn't actually occurred to us that people would want to hold on to their fines and pay them later. I'm sure we would take them, but no, the intention was just to waive them for this year. It's really very difficult to collect them now. People can't, there's no way to really accept the fines. And it was just our recognition of how difficult it is to get things back on time. Part of it is we're putting everything that comes in through a 3-day quarantine. So if you've signed out a DVD, for example, it's almost guaranteed to come back late. And we didn't want people to be worried about having to pay fines and having to get things back days early, so they didn't have to worry about fines. We felt it was just easier on everybody, the staff and our patrons as well, just to say for the remainder of this year, let's just let that go. That's not a really important thing. The more important thing is that people are using the library as best as we can, and that the materials in the library are circulating in the community and being used. So it's a nice idea, but I guess we hadn't really considered, if people.
No, I can appreciate that, because it crossed my. I know sometimes you've done that wonderful thing with the food for fines, which is great, and it crossed my mind that when opportunity permits, residents may, myself included, like to catch up on whatever those books accrued. But on the subject, if I may, Mr. Mayor, as a follow-up, how is it going at the library with the walk-up, pick-up, and take-away of books?
Ken?
Through your worship, really, really well. We've been taking statistics, so we've been getting hundreds of people a day, or hundreds, and so we've heard nothing but good comments, except for people worried about fines. So we've been trying to reassure them and not to worry about fines. Your account's not going to be frozen if you have an overdue book. And that seems to be the only concern people have. People are just really happy to be able to come to the library and pick stuff up. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. They can place their holds online, or they can phone us and we'll make a hold for them. And we contact people when things are ready to be picked up, and they can just come to the parking lot door, and we put everything in a bag so it's all nice and there's no contact between people that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been going well. We've heard really nothing but good comments, and it's sort of nice to see people's face again too.
Yeah, for sure.
It's hard to run a library completely online. I mean, we've gotten pretty good at it, but that's not really the way it should be done, I don't think.
I think you've gotten very good at it at a time that required it, but we all look forward to getting back to a more normal way of doing business. But thanks, Ken, and thanks to your staff too for the great job.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on then to item 8.1, Standing Committee Report, the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee. And it is moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Be it resolved that Council received the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee report from its meeting held June 8, 2020, and hereby approve the recommendations contained within the report as presented. PW 2020-10, Advanced Replacement Loader Purchase. Recommendation to endorse the purchase of a replacement loader to be funded from the Public Works Equipment Reserve and to commence the procurement process of the replacement loader outlined in option 2 of the report. P 2020-11, Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw, Block 1, 20 and 10 Riverside Townhouses. Recommendation to enact and pass the Part Lot Control Exemption Bylaw to allow for the creation of 12 lots for townhouse dwelling units. P 2020-12, 27 Simcoe Street redevelopment. Recommendation is to approve the processing of the proposed redevelopment of 27 Simcoe Street as a minor adjustment to a site plan control agreement subject to conditions. In Collingwood Heritage Committee minutes, May 15, 2020. Recommendation to receive the minutes of the May 15, 2020 Heritage Advisory Committee meeting. And these are all items that were passed unanimously at the Standing Committee. So we do that as a consent bundle together. And I will ask for any questions or comments then before I call the vote. Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And this takes us to 8.2, reports, minutes of other committees and boards. 8.2.1 is the Collingwood Heritage Committee recommendations of May 15, 2020. And it is moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Hamlin that the Development and Operations Services Standing Committee requests staff to report back at the council meeting of June 22nd, 2020 to confirm if monies can be allocated within the 2020 Heritage budget to ensure that the full 40,000 budgeted for the 2020 grant applications can be attained. And I think there's a change to that because we have got that wording. And I'll just look to clerk on this to make sure I'm correct on that. Yes, I found the updated motion. My apologies. So it's moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Collingwood Heritage Committee meeting held May 15, 2020 be received. And further, that the council authorize the reallocation of funds within the 2020 heritage budget to ensure that the full 40,000 budgeted for the 2020 grant applications can be attained, and grants be prorated on that basis as confirmed by staff. And further, that all grant recipients be advised that all grant monies shall be used and submission material be provided to the town by not later than February 15th of the following year to be eligible to receive their grant. Are there any questions or comments on that item before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, Councillor Doherty, you wanted to make a comment? Go ahead. Can you get unmuted?
Thank you. Yes, I'm just wondering if we can have staff comment on how the budget would be allocated in 2020, because there was some question arising at the Development and Operations meeting that because certain grants were submitted late, that they would be late in 2019, that they would be paid out of the 2020 budget, and thus reducing the 2020 budget to those applicants who were applying for this year. And I'm just wondering if we can get some clarity from staff on that, please.
All right, I will look to Director Farr. Adam, are you able to assist on that?
Yes. So the original situation emerged because there were two grants where the applicants hadn't submitted their invoices in time to meet the various different financial scheduling deadlines that the town has in place. The result was that those two projects were going to dip into the 2020 money. With this motion that had been made by council to see if we could, I guess, make the applicants for 2020 whole, that is not to discount them by the amount that was being paid to the 29 applicants. With this motion, staff went back to see if we could move things around in the heritage budget or find some monies, basically an additional $6,000, which was the amount that was carried over to effectively pay the 2019 applicants and then pay the undiscounted grants on the basis that the 2020 applicants submit all their documents and everything before February 15th. So what's happened here is we've worked with the treasurer to review the heritage budget to check to make sure that there is enough money to pay for those 2019 late, grant claimants, as well as pay the full undiscounted amount to the 2020 applicants, so long as they get their documentation in by February 15th.
Thank you, Adam. Any follow-up, Councillor Doherty?
No, thank you. I think that's an excellent and equitable resolution. Thank you.
All right then, unless there's any other comments, I'm going to call the vote on this item. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And next up is item 8.3. It's the bylaw to put the part lot exemption in place, and it's moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. The bylaw number 2020-42 being a bylaw to enact and pass a part lot control exemption to allow for the creation of 12 lots for townhouse dwelling units at blocks 1, 2, and 10, Plan 51M-1124, be enacted and passed this 22nd day of June 2020. Any comments or questions, council, before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. And this brings us to item 9.1, staff reports, CAO 2020-6, Collingwood Downtown BIA Farmers Market 2020 funding request. And I will pass it over to CAO Skinner to introduce that.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Yes, we, as you know, received the request. Council received the request at the last meeting via the correspondence consent agenda to help the BIA fund the farmers market for 2020. And staff took a look at this with the help of the Business Development Center and the Treasurer and others. And we've made a recommendation that the council consider providing just a $5,589 from the COVID Recovery Fund to the BIA. This recognizes a few items, and in particular that there are many benefits from the farmers market to the broader community. We also looked at the full request that had come in. It was looking at whether they would, all the things that are required after conversation between the BIA and the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit. One of the considerations that actually had about a $10,000, $11,000 range, $10,500 range in the request was whether they would purchase or rent fencing. So this is not full high fencing, it's a lower fencing that's movable that would separate people as they entered or didn't enter the market. And upon conversation with staff, we didn't think that we had an ongoing town need for the fencing for multiple years. And with the unknowns on whether we'll need it for COVID-related purposes, we recommended that the rental option made sense to staff. And it was mentioned at the last meeting as well, I think by Councillor Doherty, that if we did purchase the, or the BIA for that matter, purchase the fencing, we'd be looking at how to move it, install it, and store it. There was one item, we reviewed the number of staff, security/ambassador staff that would be required. Originally was 3 security trained staff, and we thought that potentially, given the relatively good behavior of shoppers at the farmers market, that we could probably discount that a little. However, the BIA is accountable for managing their own market, so they'd have to put their own considerations in there. And finally, we looked at whether the town should pay the full amount of all the additional COVID costs. And we made a proposal that it would be fair and reasonable, given the support of businesses in the community, for the town to pay the 50% of the full costs. And further, if the BIA and their staff were able to further discount those costs or find efficiencies through the summer, that the town, we don't recommend that the town try to take back any of those items. So if some of the requirements were lifted, for example, through the summer, we wouldn't be looking to take that money back from the BIA, that they would have the full commitment that their budget would be topped up to the amount that's recommended. Thank you, Your Worship. That's an overall quick introduction.
Thank you, Sonia. So I will read the motion out, and then I will look for a move and a seconder. And the motion reads, be it resolved that council receives staff report CAO 2020-6 and approve the provision of $5,589 from the COVID Recovery Fund to the BIA for the 2020 farmers market. Can I get a mover, please? It's moved by Councillor Deputy Mayor Hall, sorry, and seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Questions or comments, council, before I call the vote? No, that's good. Well, I'd certainly like to commend. Oh, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just wanted to convey through you to staff, not only as it relates to the market, but to a whole host of other things that are going on between both the municipality and the BIA. I just want to thank them, both our staff and the staff from the BIA. The level of collaboration that's been experienced in the last number of weeks as we come out of COVID and we continue to move forward, hopefully to a post-COVID period, should be commended. In the last week, and I'm taking a little bit of liberty because it's not directly related to the market, but in the last week, we've seen where, flower beds have finally been completed. They look fantastic. A few to be still done, but overall they look great. New banners, they're fresh, they're vibrant, they're colorful. A lot of collaboration happening between various merchants, etc. So a lot of good things happening. And behind the scenes, a lot was done to ensure that that could take place. So my hat's off to those involved.
All right. Any other questions or comments, Council? Seeing none, I just want to echo the Deputy Mayor's comments. It's great to see the collaboration going on in the downtown core, and I commend the BIA and our staff who've been out getting things looking like we're ready for action. So all very encouraging. With that, I will call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 10, motions. And I'm going to go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I didn't want to prejudice the vote, but as a result of the passing, the Collingwood Farmers Market will be open this Saturday. So that's the 25th. So we can look forward to that. For further details as it relates to the layout and specifics in terms of entry point, exit point, times of operation, I would encourage people just to follow along social media and the BIA's own website, as I'm sure it will be updated with the key facts, but it'll be up and running on the 25th, which is great news.
Very good news. And with that, Deputy Mayor, I'm going to pass the chair over to you for item 10.1, which is the rainbow sidewalk installation.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. As I'm looking for my cheat sheets that were handed out by the Deputy Clerk earlier today, I'm assuming that you've got a seconder for your motion?
I don't, so I will don't. For one.
Okay, so
there's a few.
In that case, I see a seconder already, so I'll read it through. This is related to 10.1, the rainbow sidewalk installation, and notice was provided by Mayor Saunderson at our June 8th, 2020 Development Operations Services Standing Committee meeting, and the motion reads as such, and it's by Mayor Saunderson, seconded by Councillor Madigan, that staff investigate options for the installation of a rainbow crosswalk or other feature to recognize diversity in the town of Collingwood. And assuming you would like to speak to this, Mayor Saunderson, would you like to go last? I can't. Sorry, you were muted.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'll go last.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, Mayor Saunderson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we've had lots of discussion about diversity over the last several weeks. It's been part of our strategic plan that we recently finalized, and it is part of our UN commitment to sustainable goal number 11, safe, inclusive, resilient communities. And we have now raised the pride flag for 3 years running, and we were very much looking forward to our first Pride Festival this summer. Unfortunately, like many other events, because of COVID, it's been canceled. And so I wanted to get staff looking at a crosswalk or other installation that we could put in town to recognize the pride flag and the rainbow group that's recently come up in our community and our leaders in the diversity and tolerance discussions. And so I am asking council to support this motion today to have staff come back to us and tell us what types of options are available to us.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. There weren't any questions prior, but I'll ask again just for a second time. Does anybody wish to speak to this matter? That said, just before I call the vote, I just wanted to make one quick comment, and that is that this is in regards to an installation of colors for a sidewalk, but last week we raised the flag at the library But it was also of note that at our own Ontario Provincial Police station on Ontario Street, they too are flying the rainbow flag. I don't know if that's a provincial mandate or whether they did that locally, but I just thought I'd note that. It's worth noting anyways. So with that said, if there are no further questions, all those in favor of the motion? And that carries unanimously. And the chair is back to you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We have two other motions actually on the slate for today. And the first one, I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I was thinking I was going to come under notice of motion.
Were you
Sorry?
looking to waive notice though, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm looking to waive notice for sure.
Yeah, okay, so
Thank
I'm gonna bring you up now so that you can put your motion on the table and explain the urgency.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is regard to my work at FCM as a national director and their recent advocacy work. And I know that we've spoken a bit about the $10 billion ask to the federal government. And so just for the purposes of waiving notice, my motion is simply that therefore be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Collingwood endorse the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as they continue to appeal other orders of government for emergency operating funding on behalf of Canadian municipalities. And the urgency is that it's really important that the messaging come from as many municipalities as possible as FCM continues to try to avoid jurisdictional wrangling and get funding, much needed operational emergency funding for municipalities. And that's it. That's the description, at least to get the notice waived.
I look for a seconder to waive for the motion to waive. I have Councillor Berman, and I will call the vote. All in favor of waiving the notice of motion? And that is carried. And now I'll pass it back to you, Councillor Jeffrey, for your motion.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Whereas municipalities, business and labor leaders are calling upon federal, provincial and territorial governments to come together to support municipalities on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas in April, FCM released a report showing that municipalities nationwide face a near-term gap of 10 to 15 billion due to the pandemic, and municipal leaders are seeking emergency funding to keep frontline services going strong and to be ready to drive Canada's recovery. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Collingwood endorse the federal Canadian municipalities as it continues to appeal other orders of government for emergency operating funding on behalf of Canadian municipalities.
I will look for a seconder to get that on the floor for discussion. Councillor Berman. Any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. Let's hope we get some money from this. And I actually have as well a notice of motion that I need to waive, and so I'm going to pass it back to the Deputy Mayor to run the meeting while I put this on the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So I will turn it back to you to simply provide a preamble, and then I'll look to find obviously a mover and a seconder to provide notice to waive. So go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I've been in touch with the hospital, and Drs. Lisi and Dr. Quigg are concerned about the potential for a second wave occurring as restrictions get relaxed and we get into the summer season. And so they are starting a campaign through the hospital. It's a social media campaign to raise awareness, and it's entitled "Protect Our Community, Wear a Mask." And the reason for the urgency today is that they're trying to launch this in the middle of July. And I had received an email earlier, but had an opportunity today to speak with Joy Pritchard-Kerr, who explained what it is exactly they're looking for. And they are looking for council to be part of the messaging, champions for this cause. And they are asking us to, it's consistent with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. It's talking about when it's appropriate to wear a mask, how to properly wear a mask, and so that we are making sure that we are protecting ourselves and our community as we get a little more active in the streets. And so Dr. Lisi and Dr. Quaid are two of the champions, but the hospital has reached out to this council to ask if we would be willing to be champions for this messaging campaign as well for the safety of our community. So to get the program properly launched in the middle of July, I am asking council to waive notice today and to consider the motion so that we can give the hospital an answer and in appropriate time for them to launch the campaign with or without our involvement.
Okay, thank you. So then looking at my screen, do I have a seconder to provide notice? Councillor Jeffrey? So then I'll call the vote then to request notice. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Apologies, you were just going to call the vote to waive notice, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Oh, thank you, sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
No, that's okay. So moved by the mayor and seconded Councillor Jeffrey. This is to waive notice. So all those in favor? Okay, and that's carried unanimously. So do you actually have a notice, a formal notice, Mayor Saunderson?
I do, I should, I think. I might not. So that being the case, then the notice of motion is that council accept the invitation of the CGMH Hospital and agree to be champions in the media campaign, protect our community, wear a mask, to help spread the word about the importance of wearing a mask in appropriate social settings in our community for the protection of our residents and our community.
Okay, just before I ask for a seconder and then open it up for discussion, Clerk Almus, was that captured properly? You're good with that?
Certainly, we did have a motion prepared, but what Mayor Saunderson provided is sufficiently covers it.
Okay. So, Mayor Saunderson, would it be fair to say that you've already captured the motion in terms of the request?
Yes, I guess what I would add, and I think probably the clerk had this captured in the motion, but the media campaign is really to inform our residents and the public, including people coming to Collingwood, not residents. Now, number one, why it is important to wear a mask now. 2, how to wear, store, and clean masks properly. 3, when to wear a mask. And 4, where to find or how to make low-cost masks. So it's really about getting information out there to make sure that people understand the proper use of the masks and how to use them properly and how to take care of them. And as I said before, it is consistent with the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit messaging about wearing a mask when you can't maintain the safe social distancing of 2 meters. So this is, and as well, this does dovetail in with the task force recommendation about trying to create a sort of code of behavior so that confidence and trust is in the public to use our stores, to shop and move around in our community, and do so in a way that protects our health.
Okay, thank you. So before I go any further, I will ask, is there a seconder for this particular motion? Councillor Hamlin, so we'll have Councillor Hamlin second it. Would anybody like to speak to this, or does anyone have any questions? So I've got Councillor Doherty followed by Councillor McLeod. Go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much. Through you to the mayor. So just to confirm, this is a motion to assist in the communication of a hospital initiative to encourage the use of masks, but not to mandate the use of masks. Is that correct?
Masks. my understanding is that that's something that would be done by the health unit, as happened in Guelph, but the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit has not mandated masks. So we are working together as a council with the hospital to get the proper messaging out about the importance to wear a mask when it's appropriate.
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the Mayor. Are we talking about council members making appearances on the radio, on the television? Are you asking us to hand over our social media feeds? Am I giving sewing lessons on YouTube? What is it that you're asking for here?
We're asking for council to participate with the hospital. They will be using social media, radio, online, some billboards, just about spreading the message. And no, they don't require you to sew. They're really just asking us to champion their message about when it's appropriate to wear a mask, and just to make sure that we're all working together to keep our community safe as we get more, get out more and get more interactive.
And a follow-up, if that's right with you, Deputy.
Please.
Are there dollars connected to this request, or is it merely the social media stuff?
It's the social media stuff. It's a hospital campaign, and they're asking us to assist with getting the message out.
Thank you. And a comment, I'm a little disappointed. I've been practicing sewing, so.
Okay, seeing that, I'll just ask it. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? Yeah, Councillor Jeffrey, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a quick comment that I've seen Dr. Lisi's video online regarding how to properly wear the mask, and it is very helpful, extremely helpful, because you might be surprised at some of the things I've seen a lot of people doing that are no-nos in terms of wearing and removing the mask and things. So I think our part in coming in, being able to educate people on when and why will be really important. I'm happy to participate.
Excellent. Okay. So with that, we've got a motion on the table, tabled by the mayor, supported by Councillor Hamlin as the seconder. And I'll call the question then. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And I'll turn the chair back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Council, for entertaining that on such short notice. So that brings us then to item 11, bylaws. And the first one, 11.1, it's moved by Councillor Madigan, seconded by Councillor Doherty. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-43, being a bylaw to appoint a deputy treasurer for the corporation of the town of Collingwood, be enacted and passed this 22nd day of June 2020. And the deputy treasurer being named is Jennifer Graham. Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. The next is 11.2, moved by Councillor Doherty and seconded by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-45, being a bylaw to appoint a municipal law enforcement officer for the corporation of the town of Collingwood, be enacted and passed this 22nd day of June 2020, and the individual is Evan Orser. Any comments or questions before I call a vote? Go ahead, Sonia.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did get a bit of feedback just about the process for the bylaw appointments, and the two bits of feedback that came through one of the councillors was it would be helpful if there was an understanding of the end dates on bylaw appointments, and also the job descriptions to which they applied. And I just wanted council to know that that was a helpful bit of continuous improvement that we would consider going forward. And I thought I would say that up front. Thank you. As at least one of these is just a summer student appointment.
Thank you, Sonia. Any questions or comments, council? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And the final bylaw in this batch is moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor Jeffrey. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-46, being a bylaw to appoint a municipal law enforcement officer for the corporation of the town of Collingwood, be enacted and passed this 22nd day of June 2020. And the individual is Chloe Almus. Any questions or comments, staff? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. So that brings us to notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion, council? Seeing none, I'm going to call again on the deputy mayor because I have a notice of motion. So I will pass it to you, Keith.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Back to you to read in or provide your notice of motion.
Okay, so we had been approached in the past by Spirits Canada for Fairness for Ontario Spirits campaign, and we have been approached by them again. And the campaign has been as beer was brought into grocery stores. Spirits Canada felt it was only fair that grain alcohol also be brought into the stores, grocery stores as well. And so now that beer is available in our grocery stores, but not alcohol, they are continuing this campaign. So I will be asking council at our next meeting to be it resolved that council support the Spirits Canada Fairness for Ontario Spirits campaign, which advocates for the inclusion of Ontario-made spirits in all provincial grocery stores currently authorized to sell beer, wine, and cider. And that is it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Turn it back to you then, sir.
So if there's no other notices of motion, we had a county report last week. I don't know if there's anything you wish to speak to today, Deputy Mayor?
There wasn't, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. So that brings us to item 14, 14.1, old or deferred business. Is there any old or deferred business, council? Seeing none. 14.2, other business. Are there any items under other business tonight? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. I just noticed in the AMO update that came out today that the province is considering requiring municipal support for new and expanded water bottling proposals. And it's announced that it's consulting on proposals to manage and protect surface and ground water quality. And they're looking for municipal official input up to August 2nd, 2020. So I don't know if this occurs through NVCA, through our rep, if they've heard of this for the area, or through our planning department, or if we've had a heads up on that yet. Just wondering.
We'll look to staff as who would like to answer that question, or do we have any information? I guess the answer may be that we don't. I'll look to Councillor McLeod, who's our vice chair of the NDCA. Councillor McLeod.
And we have a meeting on Friday. I will certainly be requesting information from staff at the NVCA. I'll report back to you at my earliest convenience.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor CAO Skinner. Go ahead. And then I have Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Having reviewed programs as the compliance director at the Ministry of the Environment, and also having been the CAO of the Conservation Authority, I've had some experience with looking at water bottling proposals and the concept and how aquifers work. And one of the challenges for a municipality in this topic specifically is that aquifers have no, they don't respect geographic boundaries very well. This is, while a very important thing for Ontarians to understand. And right now, with municipalities that are using aquifers for their drinking water, it's typically the conservation authorities through the Drinking Water Source Protection who have who've looked at aquifers. So I would be happy if it's appropriate after NVCA has looked at things to bring forward a brief staff report, but this is generally not an area where municipal staff have expertise upon which to provide value to council in providing ongoing decisions of this type. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Councillor Hamlin, I think you had your card up.
Well, my comment is more in the nature of a complaint, not about our town, but I did also read this announcement from AMO today that Councillor Jeffries mentioned. And I thought about our discussion that we had at this council table about a year ago or so concerning bottled water and what might happen with our water that we sell to New Tecumseh. And then when I thought again about the AMO notice, which basically gives us no notice, and it's not AMO's fault, it's the province's fault. I just have to think that really it's not a consultation where they're really looking for input for municipalities, because no municipality could get that request for information, deal with it at a council meeting, ask staff to do some work on it, debate it, and get a response back by August the 2nd. So I just think it's window dressing, and I don't think our staff should waste their time on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll look forward to see if anything comes down through the NVCA. Any other business? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add to Councillor Hamlin's comment that it is indeed a very tight time, unrealistically so. However, after the NVCA meeting on Friday, perhaps we could collectively send a message back to AMO, who are in a position to advocate for multiple municipalities, to go back to the government, either asking more time for a consultation, or if there is general consensus across municipalities, to convey that to the province within that very tight timeline.
I think we can revisit it with what we hear back from the NVCA and taking into account CEO Skinner's comments about the process. So, but we can certainly have a look at that and defer that to after the meeting on Friday. Is there any other business? All right, then moving on. Then we have item 15.1, receive in camera, and it is moved by Councillor Jeffrey and seconded by Councillor Hamlin. Whereas the clerk hereby concurs the reasons for the in-camera session have been duly reviewed and considered, and the matters are authorized under the exception provisions to conduct a closed session in accordance with the Municipal Act prior to proceeding into closed session. Therefore, be it resolved that this council proceeds in camera in order to address a matter pertaining to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land for town or local board purposes, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including town or local board employees, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, the security of the property of the municipality or local board. And the items for discussion are easement agreement, 41 here Ontario Street, use of road allowance request, and Heritage Advisory Committee membership. Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. So it's now 22 minutes after 6. I will say that we should reconvene at 25 to 7 so that people can have a break. With that, I will pass it over to the clerk.
All right, so we will resume at 6:35, and we will start the process for our in-camera meeting at that time. Anybody that is watching, they're welcome to stick around or watch on Rogers or our live feed to watch the remainder of the meeting following the in-camera.
We should be live in just a few moments, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
We're live.
Good, thank you, Chris. All right, I have a motion to rise from in camera. It's moved by Councillor Hamlin and seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. Be it resolved that Council rise from in camera and return to public session at 8:05 p.m. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And we have a motion moved by Councillor Berman, seconded by Councillor Madigan. Be it resolved that the Collingwood Heritage Committee membership be temporarily reduced to 5 members until such time as recommendations from RES-117-2020 regarding the review of specific agency or organization representation on all town boards and committees, including the general roles expected of any committee member, together with potential structural changes to any committee or board, is brought forward for standing committee and council consideration. Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote on this, council? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Opposed? Duly noted. And so we now come to the confirmatory bylaw. It is moved by Deputy Mayor Hall and seconded by Councillor McLeod. Be it resolved, the bylaw. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
My apologies, Your Worship. We had intended to provide an update because we have some changes with respect to patios.
Oh, yes.
And maybe
My apologies. Yep. Go ahead, please. Becky? Go ahead. Thank you.
I won't keep you because I know that you guys have had a long night, but we've received the feedback in from all the Simcoe Street people, and it's been decided that this week's a little too soon for everyone. So we're going to move forward with the first pilot project for the closure of Simcoe Street on July 2nd to the 4th. And this will include just the section between St. Mary Street and St. Paul Street. The other section of Simcoe Street had some challenges to it and not everyone was on board. So we thought we'd give our first pilot try with that one art section of Simcoe Street. With respect to the patios, you're going to see them start popping up this week. Our curb stops and bollards are coming in. They're being assembled as we speak. And you'll see Caesar Bar has been doing some work. Duncan's Cafe is going to be having a patio this week. And I've been in conversation with Espresso Post and Fig and Feta. So that'll be exciting to see what it looks like. And speaking with Martin, we're going to do a bit of a promotion once they're up and running so people can see what they look like and hopefully get some more action downtown. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Sarah?
Oh, I think that's great. Thanks, Becky.
That's a great update. Thank you. Becky, are there any questions, council? Seeing none, thanks, thanks, Becky. And thanks to all staff who were involved in turning this around so quickly. And it'll be great to see the patios opening up. And we look forward to the street closure pilot.
Great.
All right. Sarah, am I good to go on the bylaw? Thank you. All right, so it's moved by Deputy Mayor Hall, seconded by Councillor McLeod. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2020-44, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held June 22nd, 2020, be enacted and passed this 22nd day of June, 2020. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we have one last item of business. Councillor Jeffrey, a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you very much, everyone. It was a good, busy meeting. Good night.